Bonjour and welcome. My name is Michelle Chawla. I'm the Director General of the Strategy and Public Affairs Division at the Canada Council for the Arts. On behalf of the Council, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to our 2019 annual public meeting. I will be the MC for today's event. Je salue tous.
I'd like to welcome all of you who are joining us today via webcast, as well as those who are following us on social media.
Will be in English and French, and the speeches will be available in both languages on our website following the event. Merci.
Thank you to the simultaneous translation teams as well as the sign language interpretation teams in French and in English.
At this time, I'd like to start with land acknowledgement. I'd like to acknowledge our presence on the unceded customary territory of the Algonquin Nations and to recognize the unique contributions of Indigenous peoples to our cultural landscape. This afternoon's agenda includes updates on our activities and insights into the year ahead from both our Chair of our Board, Pierre Lassonde, and our Director and CEO, Simon Brault. The speeches will be followed by a question period. We will respond to questions from the live audience, as well as those of you watching online. We had also invited you to submit questions before today's meeting, and we will respond to questions that we received in advance. And for those of you online, you can send your questions using the hashtag Canada Council 19. Ceux et celles qui sont en ligne pourront nous...
Those of you who are online, you can send your questions using the hashtag Canada Council 19. We will attempt to answer to all your questions, but it's possible that we'll run out of time.
Those of you present here in Ottawa, we invite you to join us in the Winter Garden in the reception area, which is on the ground floor of the building here at 150 Elgin, where there will be a special artist performance, but more on that later. So we have a packed agenda and we're excited to share it with you. So let's get started. J'aimerais vous présenter.
I would now like to introduce the Chair of our Board of Directors, Pierre Lassonde. Pierre joined us in June 2016. A philanthropist, art collector, and patron of the arts in Canada, Pierre firmly believes that the arts should benefit all Canadians.
Welcoming Pierre Lassonde.
Thank you, Michelle. And I also would like to thank everyone who is here with us today, as much in the room as on social media out there. Every year, your attendance is proof that you believe in the Council's importance. And I'd even go so far as to say as you believe in the growing impact that we have on the lives of all Canadians. As you know, we are at the halfway mark in the progressive doubling of our budget. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the current government for the Council's budget increase. To my knowledge, there are very few national arts funding organizations in the world that are in our position. And with the ability to invest so strategically in the future of the arts sector. And I want to emphasize national because the City of Calgary has just announced that it was doubling its own investment in the arts, and we certainly applaud that. The Council is delighted to have the means it now has to support the arts and artists so that they can take their rightful place in society and have a really, truly lasting impact. I'd also like to thank you on behalf of the artists who now have enhanced means to give the public access to their great creativity. Numerous communities in Canada are already reaping the benefits of this, and I think it's just the beginning. Needless to say, many people are benefiting from this. For business people like me who know the importance of measuring the results of our investment, economic impact is a more concrete gauge. So in 2016, for example, more than 650,000 jobs in Canada were culture related. And if you look at the gross domestic product, it exceeded $53 billion. And that's a GDP strictly related to the arts. So right now, just let's take a small break and watch the video produced by the council. I want to thank all the artists and organizations who submitted images and footage for this video. Please roll.
It provokes us. It inspires us. It stirs our imagination, feeds our creativity, and sets us in motion. It takes us places we never thought possible. It is freedom, experimentation, pain, and joy. It creates new myths and reinvents old ones. It soothes the weary and offers us hope, touches our very souls. It breaks new ground, breaks down walls, and brings us together. Art connects us with ourselves and drives us forward, telling our stories and giving us voice. Art shows us who we are. Arts are part of us all.
Well, as you can see, the video is a remarkable expression of the diverse and dynamic nature of artistic creation and the ways that it impacts us. Now, as expected, the doubling of the budget has created great expectations and raised, quite a few questions, both from current recipients, but also from those that the council is attempting to reach out for the first time. I just want to assure the arts community that the board is very aware of these questions and we are keeping our eyes to the ground. And this is why we will continue to explain the incremental doubling, because it means that investments are incremental and they are spread out over 5 years. And they're based also on very clear-cut funding objectives. Simon will expand on that in his speech a little bit later. Nos investissements accrus, nous les...
We make our increased investments by respecting our processes, principles, and strategic commitments. To that end, sound governance of the Canada Council for the Arts is crucial. The management of public funds must be transparent and take into account diverse and ever-changing social realities. In order to ensure this management remains optimal, the Council relies on various bodies, like the Board of Directors and its committees. But an outside perspective is always welcome. Parenthetically, I'd like to add that the Council submits to a special audit from the Office of the Auditor General every 10 years. This is a performance audit, further to which the Auditor General will issue an opinion on the Council's overall management. The last audit took place in 2018. It's a long and complex exercise during which the Council must provide an incredible amount of documents that must be examined by the auditors. I would like to avail myself of this opportunity to congratulate the teams of the Council who mobilized in order to answer the auditors' request very rigorously. You undertook quite a large effort there, and I don't need to say so, but the report was very positive. Not only did it validate the quality of the Council's management, but also confirmed the efficiency of its new orientation. The various recommendations that were put forward by the Auditor General will allow the Council to adjust accordingly. And that's the end of my little parenthesis on that. Earlier I was talking about transparency, and it's one of the reasons for which the Council connects with Canadians in two main ways every year. First, obviously, the Council publishes an annual report, And this report takes stock of the funding and our progress on commitments. Second, it holds an annual public meeting, such as the one we are gathered here for today, to report on its activities and answer questions. In 2018, our staff also held information sessions throughout the country with groups ranging from 50 to more than 200 people to address various issues. These sessions were a unique opportunity to engage directly with the artistic community. In addition to the Council's activities, the activities of the Canadian Commission for UNESCO are often coincide with those of the Council and contribute greatly to our society. Let's talk about the Let's Talk About Reconciliation initiative, led by in collaboration with various partners, has sparked rich conversations between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people, thanks to films made by Indigenous artists being shown in some 30 libraries across the country. The Council has also been present on various key podiums, and I was personally quite thrilled this year to take part in an event with our Vice President, Nathalie Bontil, and our Director General, Simon Brault. We were invited by the Conseil des Relations Internationales de Montréal, called CORIM, to examine the importance of the arts on the international stage. Under the theme of why the arts need to transcend borders, we showed how each distinct aspect of our expertise can explain and highlight the Council's strengths. Now, speaking of expertise, I'd like to say a few words about our Board of Directors. As you are aware, it is made up of some 11 members whose expertise and diversity is well worth mentioning. This year, we welcome 2 new members, Carl Schwanek from Medicine Hat in Alberta, and Kim Spencer-Nairn from Vancouver in British Columbia. They both have a wealth of experience in the management of artistic organizations and are joining a solid team whose extensive knowledge of the arts sectors and its realities are undeniable. With the board 6 men and 5 women at its helm, I believe that the Council is in very good hands. I would also like to congratulate our Vice Chair, Madame Nathalie Bontil, who just received the prestigious Peter Herrndorf Award. Director General and Chief Curator of Montreal Museum of Fine Arts, Nathalie is the first director of the Quebec Cultural Organization to receive this award. The Peter Herrndorf Award recognizes each year a leader in arts and in business who builds partnerships. Under her direction, the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts has become Canada's most visited museum. So, it's a quite excellent opportunity for us to avail ourselves of her expertise as a member of our board.
To have a board that is totally 100% committed to delivering values to all Canadians. I would like to conclude by thanking Simon Brault for his enlightened and courageous leadership at the Council, and by expressing my gratitude to all Council staff and for their passion and hard work, which is appreciated by all. I'm confident that the upcoming year will be an exciting one for the arts in Canada, and I want to thank you. I will now turn it over to our Director and CEO, Monsieur Simon Brault. Simon.
Thank you, Pierre. Merci. Bonjour tout le monde. The Canada Council, as you said, is at the midpoint of a transformative journey. Our journey began, in fact, in 2016, and it was the first year of the 5-year strategic plan that we named, I think, wisely, Shaping a New Future. Our destination at the end of that plan and after is an arts sector that is more strongly connected to the lives of our fellow citizens. In other words, an arts sector that can contribute significantly to the creation of a shared future for the many people in this country in all their diversities and aspirations. The arts hold the inherent power to bring people together. By the end of our strategic plan, the Council will emerge, hopefully, from its transformation and its strategic repositioning, better equipped to amplify the presence of this awesome power here in Canada and around the world. The Council will also be better equipped to be in sync with the needs, the evolving needs of the wider public and the realities of our ever-changing world. As our chair mentioned, in the 2016-17 year, the Council also received its first increase to its budget. As you may recall, this was part of the Government of Canada major reinvestment in the arts and culture. And by 2021, our budget will have doubled to $360 million. Now, in the 2018-19 year, we are, as I said, at the midpoint, but both of our strategic plan and both of the progressive or incremental doubling of our budget. We have also now completed the first full year of the new funding model, and we can already draw some conclusions about the viability of this model. Even at this very early stage, we're starting to see the impact, and we have an understanding of what needs to be adjusted in order to really reach all the goals and all the commitments we made. One of our programs, and I think it's the first intention I had the honor and responsibility to announce when I came to the Council, was this question that we would create a program called now Creating, Knowing, and Sharing the Arts of Cultures of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, that we would create a program that would really be informed by this notion of self-determination and this notion of sovereignty of the First Nations people. And I'd like to emphasize that all of us here, and I see that every day, we have something very important to learn from the artists that are supported through this program. Why? Because it's obvious that the Indigenous people succeeded to never separate the arts from the ideas of healing, the ideas of human existence, and their very daily life. And I think it's something really important to learn, because it's probably one of the biggest struggles we have, the majority of us, because we live in a society where we succeeded to make the separation between the arts and the human existence. There should not be no separation. In a similar vein, at the heart of the Council's transformation is the revisioning of the arts are as more deeply interconnected with all aspects of our lives. In the first year of the Creating, Knowing, and Sharing program, the Council succeeded to reach more than 200 artists, groups, and arts organizations with close to $10 million in grants, of which 40% received a grant from the Canada Council for the very first time. And that is really transformative. It's not doing more of the same. It's really opening new territories and bringing new people, new voices, new visions under the tent. Further to this, there have been significant increases to all Indigenous organizations already receiving operating funds from the Council. This has meant greater visibility of Indigenous artists here in Canada and internationally. It's fascinating. Everywhere I go in the world, there's a huge interest about this cultural renaissance, this artistic renaissance that is driven by our Indigenous artists from Canada. And I think that this recognition This acknowledgement will be even more powerful in 2019 because it's the UNESCO's International Years of Indigenous Languages, and the Canada Council will do everything to honor the importance of that year here in Canada and all around the world. Our support to Indigenous creation is part of 4 major commitments we have made in 2016. We fulfill these commitments through the strategic investment of our increased budget to have a real impact on the arts sector. I'd now like to give you a very short update on those 4 commitments. L'un de nos engagements.
One of our commitments was to triple the Council's support to Indigenous creation. So far, our investment in support of Indigenous artists and organizations has more than doubled. And we're on track to reach our goal of tripling that investment by 2021. In 2018, we also doubled our support to Canada's presence at the Venice Architectural Biennale, one of the most important international platforms for visual arts, but also for architecture, of course. And this was the first ever presentation of a project that was set up, imagined, and presented by Indigenous artists, the first official presence of Canada participating that way in the biennial. This exhibit was called Unceded. Voices of the Land was presented by internationally renowned architect Douglas Cardinal, well known here in Ottawa since he's here, and with curators Gerald McMaster and David Fortin. One of the most transformative and ambitious commitments we made, and will have the most impact on changing the artistic stage of the country over the next years, was the one to ensure 25%, therefore 1/4 of all new funds during these 5 years, and they're equivalent to the complete budget that we had previously, our former budget, therefore to ensure that 25% of these new funds would go to first-time recipients between now and 2021. This is a commitment. It's an important commitment. We're talking about a large sum of money here, and we're talking about a lot of effort in order to reach out to people who have not been reached by the Council and will have their first opportunity to create something, set something up, and launch their careers and have their voices heard, their diversity represented, that will reflect the evolving diversity of the country. This is also a commitment to reach and include the next generation of artists and arts organizations. When I talk about generation, I'm not talking about age here, but in this case, there'll be people who will come forward for the first time to the Arts Council that have been artists for quite some time, that are well established and have been working for quite some time, but this next generation, therefore, is invited. We're open. We have an openness that has never been seen at any level for quite some time now. So far, with regard to that, and it is a very ambitious objective once again, things are on track, and I'm quite happy with that. Last year, our program officers went on the road more than ever before throughout the country to speak and reach new grant recipients. They traveled across the country to help artists and arts organizations discover our new funding model and programs and better understand the support now available to them from the Council. In 2018, we held over 35 cross-country outreach sessions everywhere in almost all provinces and territories. We also held information sessions with many of the Council's priority groups, including culturally diverse and deaf and disability arts communities, youth, and artists from the official language minority communities. So it's been quite some time that the Arts Council has not been on the road as strongly present as that. And not only are we on the road to inform people, but we also have something concrete to offer, new means, new resources. We shall continue to travel across the country in 2019 to reach even more people. Expect us in places where it is not usual for the Arts Council to be present, because we realize that we shouldn't always be in the center towns of our few large cities. There's arts elsewhere. So this is more than just a commitment. Commitments that we made, but it's at the core of what we do. We want to reach all Canadians. We want to ensure that artists, writers, and other art workers have our support, and also that the population has access to a diversity of artistic expressions that is relevant, actual, vibrant, that reaches them, touches them, and that is also necessary. I therefore encourage you to follow on social media, follow us, in order to see when we will be in your area or in a community nearby. In supporting the arts across Canada, we are also thinking about how, and we're also acting on how we can support the arts around the world and literary and artistic creation throughout the world. 3 elements underpin the Council's international strategy. The first of all is our grant programs, obviously, and we're also trying, along with colleagues of departments and other arts councils throughout the world, better to understand the current geopolitical and artistic situation in the world, to develop a strategy of presence in a longer term in some areas of the world, rather than just going for a quick in and out. And in the Council, we also have new organizational functions, new ways of working in order to avail ourselves of the opportunities that present themselves, pick up quickly, and have a presence that is much more impactful on the international stage than simply receiving an application and handling it along with others. So the artists and arts organizations, we have committed to doubling our support to international activities between now and 2021 in order to better our profile. Now, this commitment was rather easy to deliver on. We have more than doubled our investments in that area, even if we're only halfway through the strategic plan period. It's one of the areas, sectors with the highest growth of demand for the Council. We find ourselves in a situation where artists, authors in Canada, and both visual languages, including Indigenous artists, are willing and ready to be present at the international scene, and there is an increasing demand everywhere in the world to hear, see, and meet Canadian artists. So this result demonstrates that there is an important interest in the planet for arts throughout the planet, but also the idea that from Canada we can contribute throughout the world. The Council will therefore continue to support the presence of our artists and arts organizations in the world over the next some years, through its grants, of course, and in particular through the Arts Abroad program. But beyond granting programs, the Council also undertook several initiatives in 2018 to strengthen Canada's arts leadership on the international stage. So in May 2018, for example, we hosted the first ever America's Cultural Summit right here in Ottawa. The event brought together artists from most of the countries in the Americas, eminent thinkers, renowned artists, leaders in public arts and culture, civil leaders, and it was an opportunity for a large discussion on our capacity of cooperating together and have even more impact in our support to the arts and develop a true cultural citizenship, which is one of the important ones for the century, mostly still before. So let's take a look at a video recording where the Argentina's Minister of Culture, because we were working together with Argentina, the two extreme countries, to organize the summit. Pablo Avelluto, which will highlight some of the ideas discussed at the summit held here in May 2018.
Creo que tenemos una oportunidad extraordinaria a partir de estos días y de establecer un llamado a la acción que nos permita poner nuestras ideas en práctica. y poder aprender unos de otros para poder desarrollar políticas culturales mejores, mejor financiamiento y un logro de los derechos plenos de ciudadanía cultural de todos los habitantes de las Américas. Bueno, en el caso argentino venimos trabajando mucho en relación a esta cuestión de cómo sumar participación de todos los sectores, en particular de aquellos más vulnerables. La cultura ya no es solamente la apreciación de las grandes manifestaciones de las disciplinas artísticas. Hoy es también un modo de construir ciudadanía, un modo nuevo de construir ciudadanía, la ciudadanía cultural, de lo cual se ha estado hablando y se va a hablar mucho en estas horas.
Lors de ce sommet, les participants ont
At the summit, participants identified common issues, advanced a call to action that was approved, where they speak of the need for greater diversity in the cultural sector, a vision for a greater digital inclusion to fight against the digital divide, and to support Indigenous rights. In this era of closing or strengthening borders, this collective statement signals the unique position of the arts to be above and beyond our respective borders, whether they be economic, political, or other, to produce more unity and cooperation between peoples in the world. What's fascinating in a summit such as that is not only the content discussed, but the people we meet, the networking done. Just to give you an idea of what it could result in, during the summit there was a participant from Mexico who was in the Mexican delegation, and who was a support person for the Mexican delegation. When I went there, I found out that she is the new Mexican Minister of Culture in the new AMLO presidency. So we have a contact with that person. We inaugurated an exposition together. It was her first function, and it was only because she was in the summit here, and she kept quite a wonderful souvenir of what we had done here together at the summit. Therefore, you can read this full call to action. It's in the final report on the summit. It's on our website, posted there. And it's worth noting that what was discussed there is now also being discussed a little bit everywhere throughout the world. And the next major summit on culture will be in Kuala Lumpur in March. And it's already very influenced by the work done by the Canada Council for the Arts did with its partners in terms of setting up the conditions for summits such as this. Last fall, I participated in several international forums where I shared many of the ideas central to the call to action in the America Summit, but I also insisted on the importance of cultural diplomacy in an increasingly divisive and worried world. Conversations such as those that occurred at the summit, or those that I could have also participated in throughout the fall, demonstrate that there are many possibilities for artists and arts organizations in Canada to be much more present on the world stage and to engage in discussions that interest the peoples throughout the world. We have a freedom of expression here. We have concerns. I see some of those that are dealt with in our Artsworth, the way of interpreting life and our way of bringing a perspective that values diversity, youth, dynamic life, which is threatened throughout the world elsewhere. And I think that the Canada Council for the Arts, by opening all the doors that we are opening currently, is preparing a future, a most promising future for our artists. The Canada Council signed, once again during that summit in May, an agreement, a partnership agreement with the Secretariat of Culture of the United Mexican States. We signed it when we were in the most difficult stages of discussing the renegotiation of NAFTA, and it was important to maintain cultural relations between Canada and Mexico. So we signed that particular agreement, which now is taking effect. Indeed, one of the elements of it is the International Festival of San Aquina, which is the most important, the Cervantino International Festival, one of the 150 in Mexico, the most important one there, and one of the most important cultural festivals in the world. And we had the opportunity to put forward, and we were asked, in fact, if we would be the guest of honor for this festival, which will be held soon in October 2019. The theme is migration. What a theme in today's context. And the Council for the Arts, Canada Council, supports directly and very enthusiastically the leadership of the festival that is now setting up their program. So in the discussion that we're holding with the Cervantino Festival, we are paying close attention to shedding light on the work and the activities of artists and companies that are emerging, the works that reflect the wide cultural diversity in Canada and our two official languages, as well as Indigenous voices. So we have a rather special role to play in terms of presenting the full spectrum of a Canadian cultural landscape. Throughout the year 2019, the Council will continue to support Canada's presence as the guest of honor at the 2020 Frankfurt Book Fair. It's the largest book fairs in the world, one of them. And since Canada is the guest of honor there in 2020 in Frankfurt, it will also be an opportunity to offer a wonderful opportunity to have a look at all of Canada's artistic creation, performing arts and others throughout, not only in Frankfurt, but throughout Germany. So together with the Department of Canadian Heritage, we created a new initiative, a new funding initiative that supports the translation of literary and non-literary works into German. This program has already had a lot of success.
These are also a key element in extending the reach of the arts internationally as well as across our vast country. That's why we made a commitment to deliver 88.5 million in grants through our Digital Strategy Fund between 2017 and 2021. Again, a very ambitious commitment. We launched the fund in the 2017-18 year and distributed during that first year $6 million through 45 grants to support the arts community in its digital transition. In the process, and since then, we developed a more profound understanding of the current realities and needs of the arts in Canada and of the Canadian public. With this in mind, we now need to evolve the Digital Strategy Fund to maximize its impact. It's a very interesting concept that we created because the Digital Fund is not a program of the Council. It's really a fund, it's a strategic fund, and it means that it is a space at Council where we can experiment, we can test, we can adjust rapidly, we can react, and we can, in fact, act and operate in a digital thinking approach as opposed to a more linear or bureaucratic way of working. On December 17, 2008, we made, so just before Christmas, we made a new funding opportunity available through the Digital Strategy Fund. And it means that organizations that received core funding from the Council in 2017 and 18 can now apply to receive funding that will help them to scale up their engagement with the digital environment. It's really a new initiative because the fund was really imagined at first to support initiatives that were, forcing or encouraging cooperation and collaboration within the sector. We are still believe that is the key for the future, but we realize that many organizations need more capacity to even be able to cooperate and collaborate with the others. They need some support in order to map what is their state in terms of digital capacities, what could be their plan in terms of becoming digital organizations. And this new initiative is really meant to help them, to offer them the financial capacities to hire experts and consultants in order to make that kind of a leap from where they are to participating in a more collaborative future in terms of digital. So the deadline for this opportunity is like tomorrow. It's February 4, so it's very fast, but it's not an onerous process, and I really encourage people leading organizations like that to think about that and to act and to apply. It will be the first in an expanded suite of offerings we have planned in the Digital Strategy Fund in the coming year. Again, this is a fund that this is a fun fund because we can adjust, we can play with it, we can try things, and we are observing what is happening everywhere in the world, and everybody is struggling to help the art sector in order to do this transition. So we don't think we have the secret recipe. We think we need to try and work with the sector. So over the next few weeks and months, you will hear about new initiatives in order to make sure that this fund will be spent and will have a lasting impact and a transformative impact for the sector. As with all great journeys, we have set out to transform the Canada Council. We knew we need to calibrate our trajectory, and we're proud of the impact we already had, and we remain dedicated to put to the commitment we put forth in 2016. At the same time, we also prepared to make the necessary changes to ensure that we can fulfill those commitments and optimize our contribution to the arts sector. This question of, keeping the focus, delivering the commitment, but also being open and intelligent and wise and agile enough to make the adjustment that are needs is really important. It's not, we have a plan and we do the plan, we don't listen to anyone. We are listening and we are adjusting. We understand our investment to have an impact on the lives of Canadians in many different ways, and that's because an investment in the arts is more than just a financial investment. It's a social investment. It's an investment in the future of our society. The arts have this incredible capacity to bring diverse people together, to foster communication among them, to encourage their collective explorations of new ideas and sometimes of very challenging ideas. In the words of the Franco-Manitoban writer Gabrielle Roy, et je vais la citer évidemment en français, nous connaîtrions-nous seulement un peu de nous-mêmes sans les arts? Would we know anything about who we are without the arts? We are ultimately committed to bringing people together in celebration of our shared humanity across Canada and indeed around the world. We're thrilled to see how our commitments have contributed to this goal in 2018, and we are absolutely committed for an ongoing success in 2019. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Simon, Pierre also.
Interesting information. So in recent months, and as part of our ongoing work at the Canada Council, we follow major societal trends that are really relevant to the arts and to the Canada Council. And as a result of the announcement around our annual public meeting, we've received several related questions. So to start the question period, we thought we'd start by beginning to respond to those areas first. So I'll turn to my colleague, Eliane. Eliane, sorry for my back. I'm just also speaking to our web audience. To start this first question, please.
Thank you, Michelle. Simon, how does the Canada Council ensure artists in regions across the country have access to and are successful in obtaining funding?
That's a good question. What is really important to every time we discuss how the Canada Council is investing across Canada, we have to have in mind that we are responding to the demands that are coming from the artists are from the organizations. We don't create that demand. We don't, just sprinkle the money. We are responding to the asks that are made to the council. And one very important principle for us, what we try to achieve, is to make sure that no matter where you are in Canada, when you apply to the Canada Council, you have the same possibility or the same rate of success. So if you are an artist in Manitoba or Toronto or Newfoundland, we hope that we can maintain a success rate, so the number of projects that are supported compared to the number of asks, that is more or less the same. So we really pay attention to that. But obviously, the level of demand in terms of projects and money is uneven across Canada. This is why we are working very hard right now to make sure that we will reach more and more, especially newcomers across Canada, in order to make sure that we can respond to demand. And this is why also we're working a lot, we're partnering a lot with regional arts council, provincial arts council, municipal arts council, in order to make sure that there will be a sustained ecosystem where demand will flow, because we are at the federal level, and frankly, the arts is developing from bottom up and not from top down.
Merci. We have 2 more questions
Thank you very much.
in advance. So, Eliane, I'll ask you to ask the second one.
Thank you, Michelle. In recent years, the issue of harassment in arts workplaces has emerged. What is the Canada Council doing to ensure healthy, respectful, and harassment-free workplaces in the arts?
So again, and this is really an important question, and obviously it emerged and notably became prominent because of movements like the Me Too movement. And that movement, it's interesting to realize that it's a movement that was initiated within the art sector or the cultural industry in general. So we pay attention to any of those movements. And the way the Canada Council reacted to that movement was that, first and foremost, trying to be exemplary in its own policies and the way it deals with those issues, but also finding ways to support the sector in order to promote best practices and in order to advance ways of equipping the artistic organizations to fight harassment and bullying and abuse. And one way we did it last year, we made an announcement with Canadian Heritage, with the Ministry of Canadian Heritage, to support a council, the Council of Human Resources in the arts sector, in order to develop tools, toolkits, consultations, and all of that to advance, to make, all the policies and all the capacities more robust inside the arts sector to fight those behaviors that are absolutely not acceptable. Obviously, it cannot be the Canada Council. One organization cannot stop everything. We cannot police the arts sector, but we think it's really important to make this question prominent in all our value statements and all our speeches, again, to be exemplary with our own staff and to support organizations that can help the arts sector to advance its capacity and knowledge to promote healthy workplaces.
Great. And
Thank
final,
you for the question. It's a good question.
It's a great question. Thank you. So, third question before we move to our live audience.
Sure, thank you, Michelle. Une question en français. Donc, Simon, il y a...
A question for Simon. A few years ago, the council changed the title of one of the categories that is essays to literary essays. Now, is the council still dedicated to financing essays? The change that was brought about in a bit before I arrived and before the new financial model, etc., some years had already been discussed. But the council and the Social Science Council were the same organization at that time. So for a long period of time, We were supporting both literary studies, university publications, essays, and such not. But over the years, with all the changes that were brought about in the creation of an autonomous council for the arts and one for the social sciences and humanities, the council decided to concentrate on literature, which is its area of expertise. Essay is a very important literary domain. I would even say that it's one of the that is taking on more and more importance. There's a current underway, a greater presence now of publications of essays in Canada, which is wonderful, and that reflects both the vitality of our democracy as well as being an insurance policy to ensure that that democracy remain lively, because essays allow the discussion of ideas, presenting different viewpoints from authors in a genre that is not scientific, but that is readable, opens up the mind, questions the status quo, and the council is quite committed to continue supporting the essay as a literary genre. We believe in it. It's something that is in our program, in our grant. We give literary prizes for it, and it's something that we also recognize in our public lending rights program. So there will be no withdrawal on the council's commitment to support literature and in particular essays. I do know that there's all kinds of worries, concerns, and discussions on that issue right now. I had the opportunity, and I was even involved personally in some of these discussions, so I met the associations of editors, of publishers, to explain our positions, to attempt to reassure them. And we are continuously discussing with them to ensure that our definitions are quite clear about what's involved. But what's important for the Arts Council is to understand that once we have defined an area, a domain, like essay, of type X, Y, Z, it's up to authors and writers to interpret the definition and arrive at positions and positions that are theirs, and I believe that that is exactly what is occurring right now at the council. Thank you very much for that question. Thank you, Simon.
So those from the live audience, I'd like to remind everyone that we can't speak to specific files or applications due to confidentiality reasons. So we ask that you please keep your questions more general in nature. So we're going to take questions from the room as well as on social media. If you're here in person, we invite you to come stand at the mic so we can capture your question for our web audience. And please don't forget to introduce yourself. And for those of you online who have any questions, please use the hashtag Canada Council 19. Je rappelle que le mot-clic en français est Conseil des arts.
Hashtag and aims is Canada Council 19 to ask questions on Twitter. Therefore, go ahead. Good day. Is the mic on? Please don't tap on it. Yes, Paul Lauzon. It's a question of personal interest. I wonder how many municipalities do not have an arts council, or how many municipal arts council are there? They're putting it the other way around. The municipal arts councils, I would say that in Canada, that is a very rare beast if you compare it to cultural or departments in cities, in particular on the French side. On the English side, there's more of them, but nonetheless, once we say arts council, we have to have a look at what it really is, just because it has the name. There's all kinds of definitions in use, but the model, that is having an organization that is specifically devoted to supporting arts, is somewhat at arm's length from political, the politicians, is an important model here in Canada. And we, well, if it's a cultural service, we'll work with them also. But if it's an arts council, oftentimes it's a little bit easier because we have a common vocabulary, but nonetheless.
When I speak to all arts organizations here, many in their documents refer to the queer community as LGBTQ, which is long-established acronyms for lesbian, gay, bi, trans, queer, etc. My suggestion is to put 2S in front of that, i.e. 2S LGBTQ, in respect to the two-spirited. This is our ancestors who were on this Turtle Island long before colonialism came over. So it is my suggestion that
Thank you.
in
Will.
future. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we should.
That's a good
Well, I
answer.
won't dispute you on that.
Thank
I agree.
you.
Mon nom est Sergio Martinez de l'atelier.
I'm from the Latin American Communications Group in Montreal.
Place of the ethnic or cultural communities in regard to the funding from the Canada Council. I am the representative of an organization that publishes books. We have published books in Spanish, but to our surprise, if we want to translate or to publish these books in either French or English, it happens that the Canada Council doesn't fund that because it only funds translations from one of the official languages into the other official language, but not from third languages. So I wonder if that policy could change, or is a policy that there is a reason for that. I mean, if there is a reason, in a way, it is ignoring the fact that there is, I guess, a lively publishing work on the part of not only the Spanish, but other communities that publish in third languages, which at the same time are interested. We are nous sommes très intéressés aussi d'avoir.
We're also very interested in having our works known by the Canadian side at large, francophones, anglophones, and to that aim, we need the funds, the financing for translation.
I want to know why.
And I cannot answer you because I don't know. But your question is important, and we will. I assure you, and any question I cannot answer today, we will answer your questions in the next few days. I'm sure there are reasons for it, but I just want to say that we should not. I understand your point. I understand your argument, but I think that the question of the space for diversity and the cultural communities is not equivalent to the question of translation, because obviously we do at Canada Council make a huge place, and I hope it will be bigger and bigger to diverse voices. But this question of publishing, translation, and all of that, I don't have the answer. If one of my colleagues, or we will give it to you in the next
I
few
think
days.
maybe the policy question that you raise is actually very interesting.
Next time someone asks me that question, I will know. I can assure you. I don't know.
But it's there's around the room, there's all sorts of Canada Council staff who I'm watching are very actively listening. And as Simon said, we do really take those type of questions very seriously, and we'll be putting all of our minds to that and come back to you with an answer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Merci.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please.
My name is Nilam Brigai, and I represent Le Groupe Culturel Montréal Serail. And I have one question and one comment. This is regarding the recipients of core funding. My suggestion would be that we could have more engagement from the program officers through the years. We do get to hear from them after following the jury deliberations, or when we have to receive our annual funding. But we do not hear from them throughout the year, and it would be good for us to know that they read what we have written or we have commented upon, and to give us some feedback, just as we can give feedback at this session. It is a suggestion that would be very helpful if this could be done.
Yes. At the same time, I kind of need to say that Canada Council is supporting now something like 3,500 organizations in Canada. So the question of the capacity, the simple capacity to have those ongoing conversations is is limited, but the fact that now we are on longer cycles in terms of grants will also create more opportunities, more time in order to be able to have those conversations. But yes, I think the commitment to have more engagement and the suggestions to have more engagement is something we want to honor. But there's also a question of a real capacity. I know that too.
The question I had was about the OLMC and what other goals does it have other than engagement or development of market access strategy? Some of the organizations that work on a shoestring budget are not able to or do not have the resources to engage in something like a market access strategy for official language minority communities. So I feel that there should be some way in which greater support, or we can find out if there are more goals or other objectives of this particular funding than just the market access strategy.
Okay, we'll take note of that. Those like market development, I mean, those are also agreements we have in a larger context with the government in terms of the situation of the linguistic minority groups. But certainly we can think of a kind of a larger spectrum of support. Yes, it could be improved. I don't have any issue with that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I am not going to get into the file itself, so therefore I have provided some feedback and I have given it, I think, to Bernadette, and
Thank
I
you.
look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please. And then after this lady's question, we'll go to a couple of online.
Thank
Please.
you. Hello, my name is Yolande Modera, and I represent the Ottawa African Festival, Pan-African Coalition of Canada. And my question, after having worked in the arts in Canada for about 30 years, how are we going to help the smaller, diverse arts communities and organizations understand and adjust and adapt to the perspective of the Canadian Council for the Arts and in Canada? Because being a consultant in the field, I'm constantly working with smaller organizations and seeing their struggle to understand the policies, to understand how do we approach this and be successful.
Yeah, it's an excellent question, and actually, it's I mean, that's a question for you. That's a question for us also, because for the first time, because there's always, I mean, you can always promise and invite people to come and all of that, but Canada Council is committed to have, as I said, a lot of new first-time recipients. So, and the money is there. So it's there. The bridging, which is, you know, where people are and where they need to be in order to be successful, that bridging could be done in many different ways. I saw in different situations in Canada, sometimes it's directly with our program officers, sometimes there are mediators, there are associations, there are NASOs. I mean, there are many different ways to do that bridging, but we, for sure, at Canada Council, do understand and are committed to make this bridging happen, because we want to deliver this commitment of having first-time recipients by 2021. Mm-hmm. So it's a good moment. You are here in Ottawa, it's even easier, but any suggestions to make it happen, since you have that experience, we want those suggestions, because we are really working on it. And in fact, for the first time, because I've been on the board before, on the board of the Canada Council for 10 years before being here, I can see now at Canada Council, and they are in the room, people working on that, there's a real outreach strategy to reach the people, to organize those sessions, to answer those specific questions. So your timing is perfect, and I invite you to talk with us about that. And we want to make it happen. It's really important, because we cannot be in a situation here at Canada Council saying, okay, we have all those possibilities, people are there, and not build that bridge.
Balance.
It's important for the artists, but it's also important for the country.
Okay.
So thank you.
Merci. Thank you.
Thank you. These are excellent questions. Eliane, do we have questions from our online viewers?
Yes, I would like to read a question we received by email, actually. So this question is from Jeffrey James, who asks, Council has eliminated matching grants to museums for the acquisition of contemporary Canadian art and severed long-standing agreements with artists' residencies in New York, London, Berlin, and Paris. Is Council failing to understand the importance of timely acquisitions of Canadian art driven by curational vision?
Those decisions I know because it was debated exactly when I came to the council. Those decisions were made again some years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, after extensive consultations and reflections at that time in the visual arts division of the council, service of the council, and the conclusion was that a lot of artists, and we have been convinced by that, came to the conclusion that the Canada Council should come with a much more flexible system for residencies around the world. That instead of spending all the money for 5 residencies in the world that were a lot of the time, serving one type of artist with one type of availability and sometimes many times the same artist, we thought that it would be much more productive to take that money and invest it to create a program of residencies that would be much more flexible, where the artists themselves would create their residencies as opposed to be told, you go there because we have an agreement and we're spending the money to maintain those residencies. So it was the decision, and since then we even invested more money for those residencies. And what we can see now is that there are more artists with different conditions who are conducting more residencies in the world. So this is why we made that decision. The acquisition budget was another decision where, again, the idea was to invest the money and take the acquisition as part of the ongoing operation of the organizations and invest more in the ongoing operations of the galleries and organizations in order to make acquisitions. So not treat it as kind of a separate activity, but bringing it back to the central in terms of their activities. And again, the money that was there has been augmented since then, and we kept some prices also who helps to do acquisitions. But again, it's a question of, we had those models in the past, they were successful, they had some kind of a limited impact, and the decision was made after consultations that offering that to more people in a much more flexible way could have more impact. Obviously, we will know more and more, with more and more experience, how those decisions were the right one, but this is where we are today.
Merci Simon. On a temps pour une...
Thank you, Simon. We have time for one last question.
I'd like to ask a question that we received on Twitter. It is from Julian Legere from Vancouver, and it's concerning harassment. So he asks, has there been any discussion about having grants include some demonstration of safe work environments, similar to new requirements of demonstrating Indigenous partnership to avoid cultural appropriation?
In fact, now when an organization is applying to the Canada Council, they have to make a declaration about the safety character, the safe character of their workplace. So they need to make a commitment that they're providing a safe workplace. And every time an issue is a serious issue or could be raised, it's something we can debate. We also always had in the recent years the question of the healthy organization, which includes that. So it's there. It's not kind of a granting criteria per se, but it's one aspect that we will look at. And if they are real serious issues and they are a threat to artists or to audience, obviously the Canada Council could act, has the possibility to act. Thank you for the question.
Excellent. Merci. Merci, Simon.
So thank you, Simon and Pierre as well. Merci.
Joined us here as well as online. En conclusion de cette rencontre,
In conclusion of our meeting, I'd like us to listen now to a singing performance from the singer Erta Ekoso. Erta Ekoso is a Franco-Ontarian artist from Africa who has lived in Canada for some years now. She has 2 albums to date and is working on a forthcoming album called Musiki and Me, which will come out next April. Erta Ekoso is also an artist that was supported by the council. Erta will sing for us her song Tiens-moi par la main, and she will be accompanied by Abel Maxwell. So please greet Erta Ekoso.
Mursian wali mod ahuadini Mursian wali mod ahur mona maunya Mursian wali mod ahuadamni punda chumka Silen mona kop meka tiens-moi par la main tiens-moi j'ai bien dormi dans tes bras tiens-moi par la main serre-moi fort j'ai bien dormi simplement tiens-moi par la main. Abel?
Comment ça va aujourd'hui? Tout le monde va bien?
How are you doing today? Everybody doing fine? Excuse me. Can we start that over, please? Thank you.
Désolée. Je suis très désolée. Mursiagan wali mod ahuadini Mursiagan wali mod ahur mona maunya Mursiagan wali mod ahuadamni punda chumka Wali mod ahum bengni bong silen mana kop meka tout le monde a quelqu'un qui l'appelle quand ça va mal tout le monde a quelqu'un avec qui il partage tout le monde a quelqu'un qui l'écoute tout le monde a quelqu'un qui l'aime quelque part mais si toi tu n'as personne tu m'as kop meka tiens-moi par la main tiens-moi j'ai bien dormi dans tes bras tiens-moi par la main serre-moi fort j'ai bien dormi simplement tiens-moi par la main tiens-moi par la main Abel, tiens-moi par la main.
Pour toi, je me lance avec bravoure. Je plane entre les aigles et les vautours et déploie mes ailes à ton secours. Mes ailes à ton secours. Que poussons la nuit comme fait le jour. Nous vaincrons la haine avec l'amour. La haine avec l'amour. Tout le monde a quelqu'un qui l'appelle quand ça va mal. Tout le monde a quelqu'un avec qui il partage tout. Tout le monde a quelqu'un qui l'écoute. Tout le monde a quelqu'un qui l'aime quelque part.
Mais si toi tu n'as personne, tu m'as. Kopmeka, tiens-moi par
la main.
Tiens-moi, j'ai bien dormi dans tes bras. Tiens-moi par la main, serre-moi fort.
Je vais vous demander de tenir la main de votre voisin comme ça, en symbole d'amitié, d'humanité.
Tiens-moi par la main.
Oh, tiens-moi par la main. Tiens-moi.
Tiens-moi par la main.
Oh, tiens-moi par la main. N'ayez pas peur de votre voisin, tenez-le par la main. Souriez-lui un peu si vous voulez.
Tiens-moi par
tiens-moi par la main. Oh, tiens-moi par la main.
Vous
pouvez chanter avec nous. Très joli.
Tiens-moi par la main. Kopmeka.
Allez-y.
Tiens-moi par la main. Kopmeka. Tiens-moi par la main. Merci.
Thank you. I'm sorry we had that little incident there.
It's an absolutely wonderful performance, and you never have to say sorry for a live event. There's something extremely touching, and we're lucky. So that was a wonderful way to end our annual public meeting, which concludes the live stream portion of our event. And I want to thank everyone who watched this online. Merci à tous ceux et celles qui nous ont écoutés en ligne.
Thanks to everybody who watched us online. Have a very good evening.